Now let's talk a little bit about physical health, something that I feel very passionate about. So the approach that we take here at Coherent Life Coaching is that the human body is well designed, right? And that's not to say that it has been created in any way, but that it has evolved to be very well adapted to its natural environment, right? To that which it needed to adapt to. Now, whether that environment is the environment that the human generally lives in now or not is a topic for another time, but briefly, I don't believe that we can assume that the human body has adapted to its modern environment with science and technology simply because the time that we spent in this time, like with this environment, is just way too briefly to have any kind of foundational effect on our genetics, right? Which is what we're mostly made up of. Now, there is epigenetics, of course, and our environment certainly has influence on the human physiology, but we can't say that the human has adapted to wherever it's living now. Like, we still need clothing if we live in cold climates because we haven't adapted to that environment. Now, so the body is well designed. We assume that it's well designed for its purpose, for its intentions, like again, for that's what it's supposed to be adapted to. Now, through his intelligence, the human has created an environment that is very different now. And so there is this kind of this question, like, what is it that our human body needs, and what is it that how should we treat our body, right? But we assume that the human body is perfect. We assume that for as long as we give it what it needs, it's going to act in a perfect manner, like it's going to make the perfect choice. And that's not proven that it is actually the case. But we assume that because, on the contrary, if we assume that the body makes bad choices, or that that the human physiology is inherently flawed, then what that means is that we can say, well, I'm sick or I'm injured because of X and I can't do anything about it. It's a genetic defect, or it's just the way it is. We're just messed up because we have been living this unnatural way for a long time, right? It's a cop-out. And so in most cases, that wouldn't actually help us to practically actually solve health-related problems in our lives, because we wouldn't take full responsibility, right? And even though it might be still the case that in case of genetic defects, for example, that there are cases where really a person can't do anything about it directly. But still, it's helpful to assume that we can do something about it, because then we are going to do our best and we're not going to give up. And it's most likely going to end up with us being in a healthier state. Like if we have a crooked toe, for example, and we can't run properly, well, we might as well make the best of it and say, well, I have this crooked toe, I can't run very well, so I might become a good swimmer. Maybe that's something I love, right? So if we assume that we can do something about it, or at least we can compensate for it, that's, I think, a healthier mindset to approach health and fitness with. Now, when it comes to physical health, what I want to convey here is an elemental principle to work with when it comes to ailments, injuries, disease, right? And it's kind of like we look at elderly people, and they are arguably the sickest people, right? I mean, I don't think there's a question about that. And we see them. First of all, they practically never run, right? We hardly ever see elderly people run, and it's a real shame, because we wouldn't ever look in animal kingdom and in, like, at least the land-based animals, and where any animal of any age cannot move quickly, right? Cannot do the equivalent of the human running. We don't see that, and that's first of all pretty odd, right? If half of human population in the elderly category never runs, then that should be kind of an indicator that something is seriously flawed. And now, how did they end up in that place, in this terrible place where you're no longer fully human, at least in the physiological sense? Like they might be still cognitively doing well, which is unlikely because, well, I believe that a large part of this disease in the elderly population especially is because we eat very unhealthfully. We eat very unnaturally. We eat a lot of processed foods, a lot of high-fat foods. We lack vitamins and minerals, and we eat a lot of food that just is empty calories, which is a lot of macronutrients, carbohydrates, fats, and proteins, but not a lot of micronutrients, like all the minerals, the phytonutrients, which are plant nutrients, right? And vitamins and all the fiber, etc., right? All these essential things that the human body apparently needs, right? One of those things is fiber, which is why it's so odd to me when people go on a carnivorous diet, like eating mostly meat, and they need the vegetables in order to get the digestion going. Anyway, so how did the elderly end up in that place? Well, first of all, they eat badly, in my humble opinion. That's the biggest factor. But when it comes to physical health, like they can't run. That can't only be diet, right? There must be something more to it. Well, when the elderly, or anybody for that matter, has arthritis, which is the inflammation of a joint, typically, for example, in the knee, then they go to the doctor, and in the modern medical system, they're typically told, there's nothing you can do about it. Arthritis is natural, comes naturally with age, and here's some medication, some anti-inflammatories, and just don't move anymore. If you run and you feel pain when you run, then just don't run anymore, right? And so they don't run anymore, and guess what? It doesn't get better, right? And that's what the doctor said, right? That's what the doctors told them. It's not going to get better. It's inevitable. And that's fascinating, because one of those fundamental principles in biology and in evolution is that of energy conservation, right? That it's essential for any organism to conserve energy, to achieve a particular goal with minimal effort, because otherwise we're wasting energy, and wasted energy, wasted calories, wasted time is wasted opportunity to procreate fundamentally, or to do something which eventually is going to lead up to success. Like if we waste time, if we waste resources, obviously the outcome is going to be worse for the species. And hence, over these thousands and tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of generations of selection through evolution, we have been programmed to conserve energy, or the body physiologically, right? There's not much choice in that, I believe. Certainly there's going to be this genetic component in it, that the body is also trying to conserve energy, like in its perfect form, in its perfect working mechanism, is going to try to conserve energy. And so when you tell somebody upon some discomfort that you shall no longer use that piece of your body as much, then why would the body ever recover from it fundamentally? If you stop using something that the body is providing, then the question is, why would the body even attempt to maintain that part of it, right? So the question why somebody is experiencing inflammation of the joints is again a topic for a different time. But I would argue that it's not necessarily just inevitable or because of wear and tear. Like if you eat the wrong way, like if you don't give the body what it needs, the right nutrients and the right nutrients in general, then it's not going to be able to work in its proper way. And so the body is aching, literally, right? But it's not really the joint that is inflamed, but it's the entire body. It's just the joint being inflamed is a symptom of a much, much more fundamental problem that is going on. And so one principle that I work with now is you either use it or you lose it, right? So you assume that the body is geared towards being used. Look at virtually any living thing out there in the animal kingdom. They're always in motion, almost always in motion, right? I mean, they are running, they are standing, they are doing anything. They are not sitting in front of the TV for 4 hours straight and things like that. And so, since the human body, arguably, in my opinion, has not adapted to being sedentary and thriving, right? It's about this thriving. It's not about can you grow old? Can you become 90 years old with a sedentary lifestyle? To me, that's not what health is about. That's really management, health management. When I talk about health, I'm talking about how you thrive. Now, nobody is thriving on a sedentary lifestyle. You feel shitty. Like, I can remember how different I felt once I started doing some exercise. Then I actually found out how good you can feel in your own body after a good run, right, where you went all out or something. For the first time in a long time, you feel how the body gets working, how the body gets going, how the warmth goes through your body, the blood is rushing through your arteries, and all of those nice things are going on when you're actually using your body. And when it comes to the joints, movement is essential to joint health because the joints themselves, they are encapsulated, right? And they are not actually directly supplied with blood, but rather the blood is filtrated, and there's not the blood itself, not the blood like it rushes through your finger or any other part, but it's a part of the blood that goes that is moved into the joint and out of the joint through movement. And so in order to maintain joint health, to keep moving is essential. And also to keep moving in the right way. Because that's another problem in modern society. When we sit all day, what happens is, once again, the body is no longer required to maintain certain muscle groups, right? Because why would we need them if we're basically sedentary most of the day? Very unusual. Muscles get weak because we don't need them as much, and it's very apparent that the body no longer maintains muscles, and actually muscles atrophy when they are not being used. And that's another piece of proof for why use it or lose it holds true in regards to our body. You either use those muscles or you lose them. I mean, not completely. They're always going to be there because they're genetically programmed. But the body won't maintain muscles that are not needed because of energy conservation, right? The muscles need energy, need resources to be maintained even if they're not being used, because cells break down and they need to be renewed. So there's no point to maintain muscles that are not being needed. Anyway, I find this very fascinating, and I really do think there's a lot to it. You either use it or you lose it. You use it correctly, and you give the body what it really needs, right? Its natural nutrition and good lifestyle habits, and then then you can thrive, and then you can use your body and thrive in your body for a long time. So that's certainly what I strive to towards in my life, and I'm working on that very diligently. And so I'm quite curious about that whole process myself. And I hope this was helpful in any way. And if you like this video, please give it a like, and thank you for watching. See ya.